And now for something completely different.
Hello and welcome back to Oskar's Flying Circus. Have you ever asked yourself the ultimate question of life, the universe and everything? Well, if you have, good news, because the book I'm going to present to you today actually contains the answer to that question. But don't worry, it isn't a highly philosophical exploration of the human mind, but rather a weird, chaotic and slightly absurd sci-fi comedy that somehow will also make you think. I have a personal connection to the book because it was a gift from my dad and one of the first English books I have ever read. The copy I have in my hands today also is the copy my dad used to read when he was younger, so that's where my personal collection also comes from. Today we're going to talk about The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And we will first start by talking about Douglas Adams, but after that we will also dive into paranoid robots, Earth's destruction, and why mice are secretly the smartest species in the universe. So, let's go! Douglas Adams was born in Cambridge, England in 1952 and he sadly died way too early from a heart attack in 2001. He wasn't just a writer, he was also a radical atheist, a tech nerd and environmentalist. During his career he also wrote for Doctor Who, worked on Monty Python with Graham Chapman and was friends with Pink Floyd. And even though he had some rough patches in his life, for example once working as a bodyguard for a rich Qatari family, he one day just came along to writing and it just worked. Because the idea for The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy hit him while lying drunk in a field in Innsbruck. Or that's what he claims. Some of his friends actually say that he had his idea way earlier in his life and just didn't came around to writing. He was also a very big procrastinator. But when in 1978 the BBC took a chance on his radio show, he just made history while writing a short little story about what happens to Earth in a not so far future, or for us actually in the past. But why should I call Adams a jack of all trades? Well, he hitchhiked across Europe, which is kind of ironic considering the book. He was the first person in Europe to buy an Apple Mac. He also loved technology, helping create an early version of Wikipedia before Wikipedia even existed, and also using early forms of laptops. But on the other hand, he was also a huge environmentalist. He wrote books, made radio shows, and talked about endangered species, for example, the great big white rhino. After talking about the writer, let's also talk about the story of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. We start with Arthur Dent's worst day ever. Arthur is just a regular guy trying to get through his Thursday when he realizes that his house is about to be bulldozed, only to also find out that the Earth is about to be bulldozed. This is said by Ford Prefect, his so-called actor friend, who actually turns out to be an alien from Betelgeuse. Ford saves Arthur just in time by hitchhiking onto a Vogon ship, but instead of a warm welcome, they get tortured with Vogon poetry. You might not realize it, but Vogon poetry is the third worst in the universe. He tries to compliment and sugarcoat the author, but the Vogon captain doesn't really care and still throws them out into the vacuum of space. Now you imagine yourself being the reader. Arthur and Ford have just been thrown into the vacuum of space. You don't know that much about the book, so you think anything can happen. And so in chapter 9, you realize that the book might be at an end. But you also see that, for example, chapter 9 is about here. So you see that there's so much left of the book, and you ask yourself how they come out of this pickle. Well, This is where, in my opinion, the most important scene of the whole book happens. Arthur and Ford get, like I said, tossed into space and are dead for sure. But they're saved by the Heart of Gold, thanks to the infinite improbability drive that is a key technology in the book besides the Hitchhiker's Guide, obviously. The infinite improbability drive works in a weird way that just makes the most impossible things happen at the most improbable time. So when there's two people in the emptiness of space, they obviously get picked up. And this is also where you realize what kind of book The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is. It is a completely ridiculous and absolutely brilliant story that doesn't really follow our laws, which you obviously also learn when the Earth is destroyed, but you think that this might be a Star Warsy or Star Trekky kind of story, but then you also see that the story doesn't make any sense at all. You think that the main characters are going to die on Earth and later on the Vogon ship, but you realize that they won't die because the author will just make something up to get them safe. And this is also where we as the reader realize that Arthur is slowly starting to accept that his life is just weird now. On the Vogon ship, he's still trying to find way and explain why Earth was destroyed and also kind of go back to his home. But when they finally arrive at the Heart of Gold, which, like I said, is really at the beginning of the book, he also realizes that Earth is now destroyed and there's so much weird stuff in the universe that he won't go back to his normal life, because his normal life now is just gone. And so we see a shift in Arthur's personality and also his opinion about alien technologies and also other aliens. Like I said, Arthur and Ford are saved by a ship. The Heart of Gold also has a crew, obviously. It contains Zaphod Beeblebrox, the galaxy's most irresponsible president who has 2 heads, 3 arms and 0 shame. He's this kind of party guy that is just cool to be cool, you know? He's like the jock in an old American movie. And Zaphod is also the half-Savaiy cousin of Ford Prefect. Trillian is the other survivor from Earth. She's an astrophysicist and way too smart for this nonsense. She might be the most competent person on the Heart of Gold, and we don't really know why she's together with Zaphod Beeblebrox and what she sees in him, but as she would put it, there was the option of going with him and hitchhiking a ride, or staying at Earth and going back to a normal, regular day on a Monday. And so she chose to hitchhike a ride. But the actual most intellectual person on the Heart of Gold is Marvin, a fan favorite but also depressed robot with a brain the size of a planet that is stuck doing menial tasks. For example, greeting new visitors on the ship like Arthur and Ford. I said the crew of the Heart of Gold is on a quest, because they find out that Earth wasn't just a planet, it was a massive supercomputer. And its purpose? To calculate the ultimate question of life, the universe and everything. You remember from the beginning when I told you that there would be the answer? Well, it was already calculated by another supercomputer called Deep Thought. And he resulted that the answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe and everything is 42. Yes, you heard me right. 42. Well, the engineers of this supercomputer weren't really happy about this answer and realized that they can't present it to their species as they will be ridiculed. So they asked the supercomputer Deep Thought why the answer is 42 and why it isn't something more philosophical. So the supercomputer answers that they have just asked the wrong question. and that he can build another supercomputer that will finally ask the right question, and when he has the right question, he will be able to answer it. So, he says to his engineers, the mice, that they have to build a supercomputer called Earth. And while we were running experiments on them, they were actually running experiments on us. And sadly, before there would be an answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe and everything, Earth is destroyed by the Vogons. So the whole quest for Margarita and the ultimate question is actually a big skit from the mice trying to get inside of Arthur's brain. They even try to pay him for it, but Arthur nicely declines because he needs it later. During the whole time where the mice are trying to get inside of Arthur's brain, the intergalactic police shows up and tries to take control of Zaphod Beeblebrox as he kidnapped himself. Only until the shootout of the police and Zaphod is ended by the police officer's life supply shutting off. Because the police ship actually committed suicide because Marvin talked to the ship and explained his depressed worldviews to it. And after this spectacular ending, the crew decides to just leave Marvin on the planet and go grab a bite to eat at the restaurant at the end of the universe. This is where the first book ends, but in the series it continues going through stranger and even more weird and absurd moments. And this is where I finally also want to review The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It is a sci-fi story that doesn't really take itself seriously, but somehow still makes a point. It is not about politics like Star Wars or space exploration like Star Trek, but about the absurdity of existence. If you like Monty Python, existential humor, and just really weird books, this is definitely a read for you. And if you also like satirical comedies on bureaucracy, well, you will find many explanations of why bureaucracy should be just ditched altogether. I will rate the book 4.2 out of 5. Obviously, because 42 is the answer to everything. It is a super funny but also chaotic read. And for me, at the beginning when I first read it, it was so weird that I didn't really understand it the first time. This is why I wouldn't give it 5 out of 5 stars, because you just have to get used to the whole universe and there's not that much explanation for you as a reader, because you just have to get along with the story and it just isn't explained because it's so absurd. The takeaway for this book is that the universe is ridiculous, and so you might well laugh about it than to deconstruct it and think about it every day and be depressed and have existential dread. And so you just laugh about how weird the universe is and get on with your day. Because at the end of this episode, I want to talk to you. Have you ever read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? And if you have, what got you interested in the book and how was your first read experience? Let's chat in the comments and talk about this fantastic work by Douglas Adams. And not only read the first book but also continue with the whole series, because if you like the first book, you will have a laugh at the next 7 books. And don't forget to like, subscribe and always know where your towel is, because you might not know when you're going to travel through the galaxy. This is the end of my episode of Oskar's Flying Circus, talking about The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I wish you a very good day, and like I said, remember where your towel is. Goodbye.